Off the western coast of Central Africa, floating in the Gulf of Guinea, lie two islands, São Tomé and Príncipe. Now, here's something you probably didn't know. It was right here, on one of these islands, that a 1919 solar eclipse gave scientists the proof they needed for Einstein's theory of relativity. A huge moment in scientific history, happening on this little speck of land in the Atlantic. And yet, for most of us, these islands are a complete mystery. So you have to wonder, why? Why has a place so central to science and world trade been, well, forgotten? Let's try and figure that out. Before any person ever set foot here, there was fire. You have to go back about 30 million years. Deep beneath the ocean, massive volcanic forces erupted, pushing these islands up from the seafloor. For thousands and thousands of years, they were just there, a pristine world completely untouched by people, a secret kept by the Atlantic. But you know how it goes. A paradise like this, once it's discovered, it's rarely left alone. And with the arrival of humanity, a whole new chapter began, one that was both brilliant and absolutely brutal. The human history here unfolds so fast, and it's pretty tragic. So in 1470, Portuguese explorers land on these empty shores. By 1493, the first settlement is up and running, populated by people Portugal considered undesirables, and this included thousands of Jewish children who were torn from their families. Just 2 decades later, the island's fate was pretty much sealed. Their location was perfect for the transatlantic slave trade. And even when slavery was officially abolished in 1876, the exploitation didn't really stop. It took another whole century until 1975 for the nation to finally claim its independence. That rich volcanic soil, it was perfect for growing sugar. And once they brought in water-powered sugar mills, production just exploded. São Tomé quickly became the #1 exporter of sugar in all of Africa. But this sweet product was made through the most bitter means you can imagine, the mass enslavement of African people, brought over from the Congo, from Angola, and the slave coast of West Africa. The entire economy, it was built on their backs. The engine that drove all this was a system called the Russas. These were enormous plantations where the managers had basically absolute power over the workers. So when Portugal finally abolished slavery in 1876, you'd think things would change. But they barely did. The system just shifted to a new kind of forced, paid labor that was, for all intents and purposes, just slavery by another name. But of course, that kind of oppression was always met with resistance. All through the 16th century, enslaved people would escape into the mountains, forming their own free communities. And the biggest act of defiance came in July of 1595. A man named Amador rallied 5,000 enslaved people in a huge rebellion. They destroyed over 60 sugar mills and fought for their freedom. And even though the rebellion was eventually put down, Amador became a national hero, a lasting symbol of the fight for liberation. Now, underneath all these scars of human history, another story was unfolding, one about geological power and incredible life, a masterpiece that was literally born from fire and violence. So, geologically speaking, São Tomé and Príncipe are really just the tips of giant underwater volcanoes. And that fiery origin gives them this absolutely breathtaking landscape. You got these dense emerald green forests that just pour down steep mountainsides until they meet these perfect beaches and the deep blue ocean. It's a world of incredible, dramatic contrasts. And if you want one image that captures that drama, it's got to be Pico Can Grande, the Great Dog Peak. It's a volcanic plug. Basically, it's the hardened magma from the throat of an ancient volcano, and it just shoots straight up out of the jungle, 663 meters high. It's this sheer tower of rock that looks like something from another planet. All this isolation has turned the islands into a kind of biological treasure chest. It's a land of extremes. You've got the world's smallest ibis here and also the world's largest sunbird. There are giant species of flowers that grow here and nowhere else on Earth. The beaches are crucial nesting spots for sea turtles. I mean, the biodiversity is so precious that the entire country has been named a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. You know, the story of the people here really mirrors the resilience of the nature. After centuries of being ruled by others, the nation's path to becoming a stable country was, well, it wasn't easy. The 20th century was scarred by violence, like the 1953 Batapa massacre, and a whole lot of political instability. After independence in 1975, the country had to live through one-party rule and even several military coup attempts. But then, something pretty remarkable started to happen. In 1990, it became one of Africa's first multi-party democracies. And today, despite that really difficult past, it's ranked as one of the most stable democracies on the continent, a place considered free, with high levels of freedom of speech. So, what's next? What does the future actually hold for Africa's second smallest nation? How does it move on from a past that was so defined by just one or two things? See, after the sugar trade faded, coffee and cocoa took over. And by the early 1900s, the islands had a whole new identity. They were known around the world as the Chocolate Islands, the biggest producer of cocoa on the planet. For decades, that one crop was everything. But, relying on just one export, that's a risky way to live. Today, the economic picture is a lot more diverse. Yeah, its old colonial ruler, Portugal, is still a major trading partner. But now, the country does business all across Europe. It's a really clear shift towards being part of the global economy, and a deliberate move away from those old dependencies. The nation's future really boils down to balancing some huge challenges with some really exciting opportunities. On the one hand, being an island nation means you have to import most of your food, which is always a risk. And with a small population, the workforce is limited. But on the other hand, that incredible, untouched nature is the perfect foundation for a growing tourism industry. And then there's the big unknown, the possibility of offshore oil, which they're exploring with Nigeria. That could change everything, for better or for worse. And all of this leads to the big final question. For São Tomé and Príncipe, the way forward is a really delicate balancing act. It's about how you build a modern economy without giving up the unique culture and pristine nature that somehow managed to survive centuries of chaos. It's a story of a forgotten nation, finally stepping out into the light and deciding for itself what it truly wants to be.